You know, when I look around at all the entrepreneurs who are grinding it out, spending 70 to 80 hours per week growing their business, you have to ask yourself the question, at what cost? Hi, my name's Tim Uchuk, and in this podcast, we're going to be exploring the tools, tactics, and strategies for crushing it and scaling your business without making the ultimate sacrifice of your time and freedom. Hey, what's up, everyone? Tim Uchuk here. It is early Monday morning, and my wife just got back. It has been probably 4 years since she's had like a weekend to herself without kids. So finally we were able to put it together, and she flew to Vancouver on the float plane, which is pretty cool, from our island house here on Comox. So she was gone from Friday till Sunday, which meant I was playing daddy daycare, and we survived. We actually had a fun weekend with the kiddos, but we were really happy to have her come back on last night, which was pretty cool. But I'm also excited to get back to work. It's the start of a new quarter. We're already actually 7 days into the quarter. So I'm excited. It's a Monday morning and just getting my week kind of planned out. But I thought I would jump on here. I was thinking about this yesterday, actually, when I was riding on my Peloton. It's a spin bike for those of you who haven't heard of Peloton. It's an amazing spin bike where it's hooked up to the internet, and you can attend like live classes. There's a leaderboard. It's all gamified. It's really, really cool. But it got me thinking about your business and this metaphor that I use all the time. And I'm going to drill into it a little bit, because I think when we hear like cliches or sayings or metaphors, I think we often don't think about their origins and what they really, really mean. And so I want to unpack a specific kind of mantra or metaphor that I often use. And I'm going to give you a bit of an origin story as well. And so what I'm referring to is, I say it all the time, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And if you run a business, if you're an entrepreneur, you know exactly what I mean when I say it's a marathon, not a sprint. But I want to unpack that with a bit of a story here, because if you truly understand what I mean when I say it's a marathon, not a sprint, it helps you to make decisions, to make better decisions, and think about how you go about strategy and so on, how you attack the day, how you attack the week. And so I'm just going to start with a story going back to 2012 when I did the Ironman in Nice, France, which was it took me just over 13 hours. Crazy race. It was, I can't calculate the miles, but it was just about 4 kilometers swimming through the Mediterranean, which was insane, especially since I'm not a very good swimmer. And then it was a 7-hour, 180-kilometer bike. So up the mountain for the first half, and then down the mountain for the second half, and then a full marathon, which is I think 26.2 miles, 44.4 or thereabouts kilometers. So the whole thing took about 13 kilometers, and it was around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So challenging endeavor. But here's what I wanted to talk about. And I was reminded yesterday when I was on the bike, because it shows this little, as you're biking, you can essentially, when you're on a bike, you can, to increase your power or your output, right? The amount of, they measure it in watts, but how much energy you're putting out there. You can either speed up your cadence, so you can pedal faster, or you can increase the gears, so you can make it harder to pedal, right? And when you do either of these two things, you can see your output on a chart. So picture, the time is going horizontally, and then your output, or the effort you're putting in, is vertical, right? And so you can see your effort literally on this chart here. And they typically will do speed work or sprints, where you do a minute of hard exercise, and then you take a 30-second break, minute on, 30 seconds off. Stuff like that. And you can see these little tables, right? You can picture it spikes up, and you hold it there where you're working hard for a period of time, and then you rest. And then you bring it up again, you hold it for a period of time, and then you rest. And it looks like these tables. It looks like these tables where you've got these peaks and valleys. And so The analogy I'm getting at is, looking at your week and structuring it in a similar fashion. And so, just getting back to this analogy of it's a marathon, not a sprint. To train for this event, and thinking about your business as an event, right? If you want your tomorrows to be better than your todays, if you want to a year from now wake up and be transformed into solving a lot of those nagging problems that just aren't going away, you have to think in these terms. And so, for if you're to train for an Ironman, it's not something that you can just like in university for your term paper, you can't procrastinate and put it off until the last week. You just can't, because you have to literally transform your body, and you need months to do it. And in order to do that, you need to fundamentally change your habits. There's no shortcuts. You have to show up every single day with the right nutrition, with putting in your time, putting in your exercise, figuring out how to swim. I was a terrible, terrible swimmer. So I had to go get swim coaching, and I had to put in hours and hours and hours in the pool just doing laps. And it took months and months and months. And so I literally had to transform from, a lazy bum into an Ironman in order to accomplish this thing. So I signed up for it on a whim in December. This was something I'd been putting off for at least a decade. I had written it down, and I knew I wanted to accomplish it. But one morning on a weekend, I had enough nerve to pull out my credit card and sign up for this thing. So I committed for it, and it was at the end of June, and I had from December until June. So that meant I had to get going. I couldn't wait until May or the start of June to start training. I had to get going right then and there. And so here's what's interesting about that when it comes to your business. If you want to accomplish anything meaningful in your business, you can't wait until the 11th hour to accomplish it. It takes daily, weekly habits. It takes commitment, not only on your part, but on your team's part. And the interesting thing about an event, leading up to an event like an Ironman, it's very tangible. I mean, I could look online at the course. I could look at the swimming course, the biking course. I could visualize it. I knew that there was a date approaching and arriving. And so it was literally an event, and there was a countdown to that event. And so getting back to the metaphor, what I'm just to kind of put a bow on this is in your business, what we do to create events is we cut our year up into quarters, right? So I'd mentioned it's the start of a new quarter. Every 90 days, we essentially have, it's like a lead up to an Ironman race where we have this event. And we talk about it at the start of the quarter, and we plan it out in a very measurable way. Where do we want to be 90 days from now as a business? So that we can look back and say, you know what, we've moved the needle as far as possible. And, where do we want to be? What do we want to accomplish? How can we make it measurable? And then once we do those things, it's a sprint, just like those little tables I was talking about in that Peloton visual. We work in 1 week sprints. And the reason why this is so critically important in your business is that as human beings, we're so hardwired for procrastinating, because if we, in the absence of a system, in the absence of having discipline in place, we will always choose the path of least resistance. If you leave it up to people's good intentions and you don't have a structure and a system, it's not measurable, people aren't being held accountable, guess what? They're going to choose the path of least resistance every hour, every day, every week, every month, and every quarter. And so where are you going to be 90 days from now? You're going to be pretty close to where you are today. Unless you break things down and say, okay, by 90 days from now, this is where we want to be. Where do we want to be by the end of this week? And so we work in 1 week sprints. We reverse engineer that quarter down to 12, 13 weeks. And we measure every single week where we want to be, so we can look back on a Friday, or for us, it's on a Monday, looking at the previous week. And we say, did we do what we were planning on doing? Yes or no? If not, what can we do and change for this week so that we can get back on track? And we do that every single week. And it prevents us from, that term paper in university that you procrastinated and waited for, and then you pulled out your hair and stressed out on, the week before it was due. And guess what? It was it was not a good outcome. So to combat this tendency to procrastinate and put things off, you have to treat your business like you're training for a marathon, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint, and you have to set up these events so that people have a reason and a motivation and a purpose behind, actually accomplishing something. You have something to look forward to, and at the end of each quarter, we celebrate it, right? And then we plan and we set up the next event. And it's just like you're training for a marathon, or in this story, it was an Ironman. Um, a lot of you have heard this story, but going back, it was so bloody challenging. I can remember it was in France, and so my pre-race meal typically is I usually had toast and peanut butter and a banana. For this thing, I was in France, so I actually had a croissant prior to the race, and it started at, I think it was like a 6 a.m. start. And literally, I was swimming for an hour and 20 minutes in the Mediterranean. There were swells, and it was terrible. So I had this croissant digesting. And long story short, I was at the furthest point out from the beach. I had people swimming over top of me. My goggles were getting kicked off, and my stomach was burning. And I was getting dizzy from all the swells and the waves. And I was literally I was over a kilometer from shore. It was terrible. So I had to tread water and regroup. And then it was just like one stroke at a time. And it took me an hour and 20 minutes to get through it, but it was hell. And so I think in your life, by putting yourself in these challenging scenarios and situations and realizing that, if you can get through it, for me, it was just like, if I can just survive this and just keep, stroke by stroke, getting back to the beach and not dying. If I can accomplish this and survive this, I can take on anything. And so that stuck with me with our business as well, where I'm kind of recalibrated, where things that might seem really crazy and daunting in the moment, I mean, if you can get through it and survive, and then reflect on it, learn from it, so that the next time something happens, you're equipped to handle it. It's a great mindset to have. So anyways, thought I would share that story with you. I hope it's helpful. That's what I mean. That's the thinking behind when I always say it's a marathon, not a sprint. I'm really talking about showing up every day, showing up every week, because, today determines the tomorrows of your life, right? So what you do today is going to have a huge impact on where you end up 90 days from now, right? Because again, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So there's a good chance that how you spend your today is going to be how you spend your tomorrow and the day after that, and so on. So it's important to think about that. And this metaphor of training for, a big race like a marathon or an Ironman is really helpful, I've found. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Wishing you success in your big future. And remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Hey, Tim Uchuk here, and real quick, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, if you could take a couple quick seconds to give it a rating, it would be very much appreciated. And secondly, if you're looking for more tools and strategies on how you can crush it in life and business, just head on over to bookwithtim.com, where I've put together a free case study which shows you how to unlock unprecedented freedom today by using the 2 power levers. Just head on over to bookwithtim.com. Until next time, wishing you success and freedom in your business. Cheers.